Bulldogs? Did they just come from lunch or something? Let's try it again. Good afternoon, Bulldogs. There we go. All right. Glad to be with you for the 4th year. So I have to give homage to my employer behind me, Jim Ellis. We are the largest family-owned automotive group around the Atlanta perimeter. There's one more group that's larger than us by 2 stores, but they're public. We are family. So being family, they allow me to come out and teach and go to schools. And watching you come in, just like I said for the previous years, compared to some of the other schools that I go to, I commend you. You got in, you shut your mouths, and you were ready to see what goes on. It doesn't happen at other schools. So I thank you and the faculty for that. So, I'm going to start. How many student athletes do we have in here? And if you don't play a sport, if you do gymnastics, if you do 4-H, if you do, that's still a student athlete. You should be proud of that title because you get an opportunity to not only learn from one of the better institutions in the state, but you wear that name across your chest when you are competing. I was fortunate to be a student athlete, and I was fortunate that I was all-state, all-American, had a chance to go to Wisconsin, Marquette, all on somebody else's money. But the thing about it, I didn't want to go to the pros. I just wanted to get through college because I had a vision of what I wanted to do. So if you're a student athlete, find a way where somebody's going to offer you some money. It's just so you can go to college. Now, if you have endeavors of going professional, God bless you. You go for it. Now, I say that to say this. I'm going to give you a handout, and if you were here last year, the year before, it's interactive. I give you the handout. I'll ask some people to read. But I want you to remember, at the end of this, I'm going to go through a quick little Q&A just to see who's paying attention. Can we agree to that? Can we agree to that? Okay. Now, the person that we're going to be looking at is also, take one, pass it down, is also a person that you're going to hear a whole lot of firsts about. So, since you have the handout, that should be pretty, ran short. How about passing all the way down? Once it gets down there, there should be some more going back over there. I know I made 100 copies. Doesn't look like there's 100 people in here, so we should be all right. But the gentleman that you're going to be learning about did a lot of firsts. So if you can read and pay attention to what's on there, you'll be pretty easy to remember and get maybe one of the gifts we have at the end for you. So, how many of you know that the Super Bowl is going to be here this coming Sunday? Excellent. How many people are going? Oh, not too many people are going? Okay. All right. How many people know something about professional football? Very good. Very good. What 2 teams are playing? Patriots and the Rams. Rams come from where? Los Angeles. Patriots come from where? Somebody said New England. New England is a few states. Boston. They come from Boston. They just get the title New England. What Super Bowl is it? 53. I remember the very first Super Bowl. We didn't call it a Super Bowl. It was just a game. The first 3 actually were just games, and then eventually it built up to what you do see now. Now, the reason why I'm saying that, before we start the reading, how many of you got an idea of who the 2 quarterbacks are? Just by show of hand, young man in the back. Got to speak up. Yeah, speak up. And Tom Brady. Which one has the most experience? Tom Brady, right? Who do you think's going to win? Okay. Quiet, quiet. Oh, I just did that for fun because everybody has their favorite. We should just enjoy a good contest. That's what we're hoping for. Now, the reason why I brought that up, we're going to go back to the beginning of the National Football League. And you're going to read some of it. But before we do that, I want to let you know, unless somebody in here already knows the answer, what were the first two teams to ever play a football game?
I feel like Kansas City Chiefs, maybe?
Well, let me specify it louder. The first two teams, I didn't say professionally, who were the first two teams to ever play a football game? Young man.
Like Yale and Harvard?
Yale and Harvard. Good guess, wrong. But you're in the right area. Now, just to move it along because time is moving, the two teams were Rutgers out of New Jersey and the College of New Jersey, which later became Princeton. So Princeton and Rutgers were the first ones in the 1860s to get together with this concept. Now, why am I saying that? What you're going to read about is a gentleman who did go to one of these Ivy schools because they were the powerhouses of that time. Now it's Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma, but in the beginning, it was the Yales, the Princetons, the Columbias. They were the ones that went to the Rose Bowl and did all of the fanfare. So, without me asking, who wants to read first? Boy, I love you.
American football player.
Got to speak up.
American football pioneer Fritz Fuller is one of the professional sports' first African-American players and its first African-American coach.
Continue.
Born on January 27, 1894 in Chicago, Illinois, Fritz Fuller broke racial barriers while achieving distinction on the football field. You're done. He was the first African-American to play a Negro Bowl and later became the first black coach of the quarterback in the NFL.
Thank you. Next. Show of hands. You scare me when you all raise your hands at once. Yes.
Fuller also was a permitted businessman with a consulting firm and a newspaper among his many. He died in 1986 and was inducted into the Football Hall of Fame in 2000.
Thank you. Now, he mispronounced one word. Well, before inducted. Yep. Say again.
Prominent.
Prominent. What is prominent?
Hold on, gotta look at the context.
What is very well, somebody said?
Well off.
Well off? Important? Okay, now we're getting to it. Who wants to read next? Yes, ma'am.
Douglas Fritz Fuller is born on January 27, 1894, in Chicago, Illinois. He felt the sting of racism as an African-American child growing up in the predominantly white neighborhood of Rogers Park. But he won admirers with his athletic accomplishments at Lady Tech High, where he was a three-time country track champion, a gifted baseball player, and star on the football.
Okay, not bad. You got through it. But what we're finding out is that he's a person just like you're sitting in now, right? Middle school, high school, he was an athlete, he enjoyed it, he loved it. But now let's read about the separation. Now I'm going to stop you. He said two things. Read it again.
Fuller received a Rockefeller scholarship.
Stop. Remember I said earlier, scholarship. That's what you want. You want somebody to pay your way to go to college. Where did he go? Remember I said earlier, the Princetons, the Harvards, they're the ones where the football powers were in the beginning. Continue.
And he became a college football standout despite his modest 5 feet 9 inches, 165 pounds stature. He was the first African American to play in the Rose Bowl
Okay, now, remember I told you in the beginning, a lot of firsts. You're going to hear a lot of firsts. You already heard a few firsts. I want to wind it down before we play a little video. Who can get to read? Who can read? Who can read? Who can read? Eric.
After leaving Brown, Fuller briefly pursued a degree in dentistry before joining the military and serving as a director of an Army YMCA. He was employed as a football coach at Lincoln University in 1919 when he was recruited to play for the Akron Pros, a professional team in Ohio.
Okay, continue. Somebody, thank you.
The Pros joined the American Professional Football Association in 1920, one of just 2 African American players in the league, along with Bobby Marshall. Pollard led his team to an 8 wins, 0 ties, and 3 loss record in the APFA's first title. The following year, he again proved a dominant player, while
Help him out.
doubling as the first African American coach in the league.
Thank you. Flip it over. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. One more paragraph. I'm up here. Yeah.
The APFA was renamed.
Gotta speak up just a little bit more.
The APFA was renamed the National Football League in 1922, and Pollard served as one of its primary gate attractions over the next few years. He played the 1922 season with the Milwaukee Badgers, and the following year signed with the Hammond Pros, for whom he became the first black quarterback in NFL history. Pollard also spent parts of the 1923 and 24 season with the independent Gilberton, Catamount, and the Pennsylvania Full League.
Thank you. Now, there is some on the back. We're not going to go to the back. I just want you to get the theme of it. When did the NFL start? This gentleman was first at Brown, first at the Rose Bowl, first at the NFL as a player, first NFL black a lot of firsts. But to get it into your head a little bit more, and then we'll drive it home with the Q&A, we got a short little video we just want to show you that will put it all together capsulized. So if we can maybe get that up.
The Roaring Twenties were known as the golden age of sport, but only for white America. College football was a big city game, played with little color. Another version was small towns and dusty sandlots. They called it postgraduate football until a few ragtag teams banded together in 1920 to form the National Football League. Here, all the white faces were joined by a single black one. His name was Frederick Douglass Pollard, son of a Native American mother and a West Indian father, raised in a German suburb of Chicago where they called him Fritz. He was one of a kind.
He was a pioneer. One of the things he first did was to appear in the Rose Bowl game, the first Rose Bowl game in 1916. He was the first black to make Walter Camp's All-American. He was the first black quarterback in the National Football League. He was the first black coach in the National Football League. Then, outside of his football career, he started the first black tabloid in New York City in 1935. In Chicago, he had the first black investment firm in the United States. And then he became an agent, and he began to represent black entertainers. He achieved so much. It wasn't just football. He was a man on a mission. And I think in his 90-plus years, he attempted and he accomplished so much.
I think I'm a very, very fortunate man, and I'm still able to get around, and very thankful that I'm alive enough to be able to have my picture taken and you gentlemen to come and see me.
In 1974, NFL Films visited Fritz. Most of that interview was never used until now.
My father was a great champion boxer in the Civil War days. and he learned the barber trade, and he moved up to a place called Rogers Park, way on the north side of Chicago, a suburb of Chicago.
Rogers Park was all German. My people were the only blacks in the area. They were the only blacks in the schools.
They were Americans, and they were not going to be confined, and they were not going to be marginalized just because their skin happened to be black.
When we went out for the football team down at Lane Tech High School, my brother said, "Say, where's my kid brother? You haven't given him a chance." He said, "Well, I'm not going to play unless you give my kid brother a chance to play." So they gave me, because of my brother, they gave me a chance to play in at 89 pounds on this Lane Tech High School football team.
In 4 years, Fritz gained 60 pounds and a place on the Cook County All-Star team, a first for a young man of color.
There were people in Chicago talked with my mother and tried to get me to go to Brown University.
So it's an interesting kind of history that almost no blacks were ever allowed to go to, quote, white colleges. So the fact that Fritz Pollard did and had done so well is extraordinary.
He would break on the scene against Harvard and Yale. And of course, at that time, it's hard to explain today because these teams are not very powerful anymore. They were college football. Pollard, in effect, ran wild against both of them. It was a revelation that this young black man who was so small could do this. All of a sudden, he went from a very marginal player to one that was getting national recognition.
But his dreams were even bigger.
He was a hero. My father was a hero. When Brown beat Yale, that was all that they needed to write. Pollard beat Yale. They give him anything he wanted. Anything.
One reward was a trip on a cross-country Pullman to play in the first ever Rose Bowl.
Of course, at that time, it was very unusual for any black person, much less a young athlete, to be on a Pullman car. The Pullman porters wouldn't serve Pollard. Some of the hotels wouldn't accept him when they got on the West Coast. So it was more than just football. It was testing, again, the racial barriers that this Rose Bowl game. But it did give him a lot of visibility.
Brown lost to Washington that day, but Fritz Pollard had already earned the greater victory. For the first time, a black man could claim the title All-American. His rise from Rogers Park had been swift, but the biggest challenge lay just ahead.
There wasn't any knowledge of pro football to amount to anything during those days. It was after I finished at Brown and I went down to University of Pennsylvania and I studied dentistry, and they came to me about playing pro football. And that's how I happened to play against Jim Thorpe and some of his Indians. Naturally, I'd heard about the great Jim Thorpe and whatnot, but I imagine he had heard about the great Fritz Pollard because I had a name at that time, too.
You know, his mom was a full-blooded Indian. He meets Jim Thorpe on the field, and Thorpe is giving him the once-over, looking at him like, who can this guy be, and what are you doing here?
And Jim said, "Hello, little black boy." I said, "Hello, big black boy." And he looked at me, you know.
And it stunned Jim Thorpe because no one ever spoke to him that way. And he said, "You as black as I am." And he said, "And I'm as much Indian as you are."
I said, "Well, we're going to play against each other. We'll find out who's going to be the blackest after this game."
These weren't Ivy League frat boys across the line. The roustabouts of the NFL were out to teach the young black All-American a lesson.
Pro football back in those days was pretty rough. As small as I was, no one had any sympathy for me at all.
No one was pulling for him, all pulling against him. And every game was a challenge, one for survival.
And the word passed around to fellows that we didn't want blacks in pro football, and let's get him.
They used to hit me one on top, one and below, in order to try to take me out.
They're trying to break his legs and hurt his arms and all kinds of stuff.
Some of them were a little rough with him, but I didn't think it was the thing to do.
And then when they would do it, they would say, "Well, you little black, I'll get you the next time."
I think he was the most abused of all of them, and he resented it, and he made them pay for it, and I don't blame him. He was good.
I'd look at him and grin. They didn't get mad and want to fight him. Just look at him and get grinned, and the next minute run 80 yards for a touchdown.
Pollard in his youth was a little more arrogant than most of them, but I think he had a reason to be.
And I wanted the honor of being the first black coach more than anything else.
Fritz not only held his own, he actually won his enemies over as the player-coach of the Akron Pros. Then the coal region of Pennsylvania called.
Those fellows came out of the mines and came up to play football. Never went to college. Never saw the inside of a high school. And I said, what kind of a little old town is this anyway? I said, you know black people around, and you never see any and whatnot. I said, they're going to give me hell out there.
It was a difficult experience for him because, as he said, they had never seen a black man in the coal region. In fact, the first game he played at Weston Field at Shenandoah at halftime, because of threats made against him, his team, which was the Gilberton Catamounts, stayed in the middle of the field because they were afraid to get near the fans because somebody might do Fritz Pollard in. But he, like throughout his life, he won respect and admiration of people, even in the coal region.
Fritz left pro football just in time to join the Harlem Renaissance of the 1930s.
The thing about his career in football and even after football was this whole line of achievement. He moved to New York, he went into coal business, and he moved up to the newspaper business, then he went into the entertainment business, and he was just so persistent and tenacious and charming.
The impact of the rights movement from Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta and all that brought forth a revolution, and the fact that Mr. Pollard was a first in a way, in a very quiet revolution. The fact that he was so resilient is extraordinary. And that's what makes him memorable, that he was so resilient.
Sadly, Fritz Pollard's efforts on behalf of African American athletes are just a faded memory. But his story is worth retelling, if only to introduce the players of today to the man who, 80 years ago, carried the ball for all of them.
Okay. Now, a lot of things were said in there, but let me just start with this. How many of you have ever heard of Fritz Pollard? Wow. Now, just like last year when we talked about Rosa Parks and we talked about the other young ladies, how come it's not in the books? Why do you think? Anybody? Let me ask. If every situation that happened in America to every race, how thick do you think the books would be? You can't tell all the stories. So some of the stories get lost in history unless you do some research. Now, there was one person up there, I'm curious. Any of you have ever heard of Jim Thorpe? Oh, a few hands, very good. Jim Thorpe was considered to be, when we look at the first half of the 1900s, from 1900 to 1950, he was the greatest athlete of all time. And this gentleman, Pollard, played against him here with that, but we would never know that. So we're going to wind it down now with this. And you got the paper there. Who can give me one first that Fritz? Speak up.
He was the first black African American to go to university.
Huh. Okay. University to do what? Play football. Okay. We got something for you, and hopefully I'll get to everybody right here in the middle here.
First African American coach.
First African American coach in the NFL. Yeah. Because some people think of the later coaches, the Dundees, and he was long before all of that.
He was the first African American to play in the Rose Bowl.
First African American to play in the Rose Bowl. Very good. You got to win. First African American quarterback. Very good. You got that. First African American running back. You got that. Back in dark shirt, dark coat. You. Give him one. Was that the bell?
No.
Oh, okay. Someone beat you to that one. See, you didn't say it long, but you said first in the College Hall of Fame. Very good.
First African American to play in the Rose Bowl.
Somebody beat you to that. But I'm glad you remembered that. All the way in the back near the camera.
He was the first African American to be on the All-American team.
Got that. Yes, ma'am. I think somebody said that one. I'll give you a little help as it winds down. It's on the back pages. Once football's over with, what first still do you have? Young man in the red.
First African American in the newspaper business.
Very good.
In the acting business, or first African American acting business?
Acting business, round it down. Who help actors? That they all have. I don't want to give it away. Say again. Oh, you have a different one. I'm still. Think about your rappers and all that today. They have people that are. I'll take agent or manager. Very good.
He was the first African American elected to the National College Football Hall of Fame.
Ooh, very good. I didn't hear that.
The first black man to organize an all-black abortion.
Outstanding.
Founded the first Invisible.
Boom. Give me another one. Got a couple more left before the bell ring, and I see the two gentlemen here. Is that gray shirt?
The first black American investor.
Ooh, investor. Very good. Yes, ma'am.
He was the first professional sports player.
Well, either way, whatever side you go to, somebody's already said both sides of those.
He was the first black to be considered All-American.
Somebody already said that in so many words.
First African American to be a producer in the entertainment industry.
Okay, the young man up here beat you with that. About time. Very good. See, because we didn't hear that there too much, so you must have did some reading. I love you. Very good. Now, so you got one? Oh, now you're reading. I like that. Very good. First to have a tabloid. Somebody mentioned something about the newspaper, but the tabloid is a smaller portion of the newspaper, so I'll give you that. Young man in the back there with the glasses.
He was the first African American in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
I believe somebody said that. Hall of Fame? Yeah, somebody said that. So, as we wind it down, because I know the bell's going to catch us in a little bit here with that, I just would love for folks who play a sport, because it's not just you. I didn't mention all the things that I did, but I played and worked with professional athletes in the minor leagues, and many of them didn't know anything about professional baseball. I would ask them, who's Curt Flood? And they shook their head. If it wasn't for a Curt Flood, you wouldn't have these people making millions upon millions of dollars. So all I'm saying is, student athletes, learn your craft, learn your history, find out who came before you. This way you're going to be a lot more valuable. Why? If you happen to be a celebrity, remember you're going to have youngsters underneath, and the best way that you can help anybody is give them the history of that sport, because you would know it. Questions, comments, concerns? Thank you for your time. Turn it back over to you.